Welcome to Zoom with Khazzoom for Joyful Living. I'm Loolwa Khazzoom. I have self-healed from multiple chronic health issues and from trauma through the tools of music, dance, and lifestyle medicine. Along the way, I've had a grand adventure and I've met incredible people. I am excited to share all of this with you now so that no matter what you're facing, you have tools for bringing joy into your life and the lives of people around you. Zoom with Khazzoom. I'm Loolwa Khazzoom, your host. I am delighted to welcome Dr. Martin Rossman. I encountered Dr. Rossman's work about 20 years ago. I got his book and it was very helpful. I was really intrigued by the work he was doing on guided imagery and mind, body, spirit connection. And I ended up finding out he was just across the water in Marin County. I took a class with him. And since then, we've worked together in many different capacities. He became one of my go-to people for all of the journalism work I was doing on health. And then I had the privilege of doing PR for his book, The Worry Solution. And that's actually, Dr. Rossman, what I really like to talk about today, because I think it is so relevant to all of the fear that's being thrown at us. People are in a chronic state of panic and worry. So I'd like to welcome you to the show. And let's jump in. Let's talk about a little bit about your book, The Worry Solution, and how it applies. In particular, my question is, so we're getting bombarded by these messages that, it's kind of like, be afraid, be very afraid, shaking your boots. And we're not even being told, what can we do to practice self-care? So, I have the privilege of knowing from decades of cultivating my own self-care regimen. I have things in place, and I'm doing a lot of proactive steps. But so many people do not have those tools at their disposal. And they're pretty much being told, stay away from people, wash your hands, wear a mask, and then just cross your fingers and pray to God. So, so many people are living in terror. Please talk about, what does the fear response do to the body, to the immune system, and what are your tools for helping people to manage the worry that they're under right now?
Okay, I think those are great questions, Lou. I think that the first thing is that I agree with you. There's a lot of factors in place where the fear is amplified and exaggerated. Maybe not exaggerated, but certainly amplified. Repetitive. It's what we hear is be scared, be, like you said, be very afraid. There is a utility to that, and the utility to that is that at least in certain parts of the country where I live in the San Francisco Bay Area, and in other parts it motivates people. I mean, fear does motivate people, and unfortunately, it's kind of one of the traditional ways we have of motivating people. In medicine, I've always thought there's got to be a better way to motivate people, but there is nothing that will motivate people more than being afraid for their lives. So, and to some degree, that fear has sunk in enough to keep a lot of people using the social distancing, which I think is critical. And I think has had a very good effect in the areas where it went into effect early and where people are obeying that. We're starting to see that that's wearing off a bit from repetition and getting used to it. And so to some degree that's useful, but you're absolutely right that it is overdone in a number of ways. And one reason is because fear sells newspapers. That's a very old slogan that goes back to the 1800s. And that's because your brain is wired that way, because the number one job of our brain, our wonderful human brain that does so many interesting and often wonderful and sometimes really crazy things, the number one job of your brain is to keep you alive. And so things that frighten you your brain is obligated to pay attention to things that frighten you. And so the media has known that for a couple hundred years. And this is why you see on the media, can't we make it frightening? You know, the second function of your brain is to reproduce the species. So things that are sexy are the number two things. So that's pretty much 99% of everything you see on the media and on the news are things that are frightening or sexy. And this has certainly got people overly glued to the media. What they don't talk about, and fear does, chronic fear, chronic worry, chronic anxiety, chronic stress, which all spin off of this, this fear, does suppress the immune system. It taxes our ability to defend ourselves. So we have to learn how to balance being appropriately afraid, noticing that there is a real danger and that there are things that we can do to reduce the danger, both to us and to our community and our loved ones, and take action on that. And to realize that we don't have to be in a fight or flight response all the time. If we're taking the appropriate measures about what we can do, you know, from the worry solution, I talk about separating out the worries into columns of things you can do something about and things you can't do anything about. So you do what you can do, and the things you can't do anything about, then you need to kind of let those go. If you're a prayerful type, you pray that we get help and that it comes out better. If you're not, I teach a technique about what I call bad worry, which is futile worry, and about things you can't do anything about, and turn it upside down and instead focus on it coming out the way we want it to come out, because it doesn't do you any extra good to keep running around and around and around with the way that you don't want it to come out. All it does is trigger your own stress responses and drain you, make it harder to sleep, make you more anxious, make it hard to think. So we have to balance that out.
How is it, talk about the basic principles of guided imagery. How is it that when we take charge of what we're thinking, that we can actually have some kind of an impact in what's going on? That may be for a lot of people a bit of a jump or a stretch. So please explain, you know, how does that work exactly?
Yeah, well, it's not a stretch at all. I mean, if I were to ask you for some reason, or ask your audience to think about the worst thing that ever happened to you and go back, and I'm not doing this, I would never do this, go back and replay it in your mind and do it in color and live action and sound and smell, and really immerse yourself in that traumatic event, it would be horrible. You would get re-traumatized. You would stir up a big fight or flight reaction in your mind. That's what we might call unguided imagery. And that's what people do with worry all the time. It's you're letting your imagination run away with you. And what you want to do instead is learn how to take a few deep breaths and start to shift your nervous system into a more relaxed space. And then focus your mind in a way that brings you things like calm and relaxation and confidence and trust and faith and patience and so on. And those are, if I asked you to focus just simply on a place you love to be, where you're comfortable and it's safe and you feel cared for and it's a great time, in about 2 or 3 minutes, your body will shift into that state, that relaxed state, which allows your body to recharge, your brain to recharge, renew itself, refresh itself, get a break from the constant stress. You have to learn that your attention belongs to you, and you can choose where you put your attention. And this unguided imagery, or guided by the media, which is essentially guided by vested interest, is just steering you into, let's keep them worked up, let's keep them scared, let's keep them where they can't stop watching. And because that's very valuable to us. And the worry solution teaches you, and any of the guided imagery resources I'm going to share with your viewers will teach you how to know. It's the off button on your TV. Turn it off for a few minutes. Go out and look at the birds. Go out and sit under a tree. Take a little walk. Notice that you know, the earth seems to be doing okay. The things that have been here longer seem to be doing okay. And let yourself be a part of that for a while. Tune into the news when you need to know something. Turn it off when you don't. The same thing is about your imagination, which has gotten stirred and is running away with you. It's like a wild horse. You can learn how to tame that horse, and then it can work for you. It can take you
One of
long
the things I
distances.
love, one of the things that I love in your guided imagery CDs is you talk about how you're doing something by doing nothing. And that's
Yeah,
a really almost radical concept in our go, 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 go kind of a
right,
world where you
exactly,
feel like,
exactly.
yeah, you feel like you have to constantly be doing something and pushing yourself. And I think that ties into something you were saying about, you know, our brains are wired for fear. You know, it's how we, you know, help keep ourselves alive. So people may think, well, I need to be afraid. I need to be aware. I need to be watching the news. You know, my family in Israel never turns the news off, and it makes me crazy. Their television is
Right,
on 24/7, you know,
right,
but they feel this need, like, well, we have to be aware so that we can protect ourselves. And so what I think is really challenging people's thinking about this in your work is you're saying, actually, it's like what we were talking about just a few minutes ago. There's a balance. Know enough that you can protect and prepare yourself, but don't
right,
dwell in that place. When you dwell in that
right.
place, it starts to shift into being destructive. So you get into
Yes,
this chronic fight flight place where, you know, you're firing off all of these biochemical processes that are actually compromising your immune system and compromising your body's ability to heal. Whereas when you're in a relaxed state, you're in the parasympathetic nervous system, and that's
right,
activating your body's innate healing
right.
mechanisms. And there's a couple things I'd like to draw from your book that I thought were really helpful. One is that for people who may have a little difficulty, you know, this is still kind of new to them, the whole mind-body connection. You give a very simple example, which is you guide people to think about you are cutting a lemon and now you're squeezing that into your mouth. And I
Right,
remember as I was reading it, my mouth was like salivating. I
right,
was having a
right,
reaction.
right.
So I think that's a really powerful image that you use to help people understand how you can have a physical reaction. And if you can please talk just a little bit more about this concept of, yeah, go for a walk, be in nature, you know, to whatever extent you can. A lot of parks are closed. Not everybody necessarily has access, but whatever it is that brings you relaxation, and including using your guided imagery CDs, that's going to put you into this parasympathetic nervous system. Please talk a little bit more about what is that parasympathetic nervous system? Why is it that by doing nothing, you're actually doing something?
Well, your nervous system is set up. You've talked about this parasympathetic. The other branch is sympathetic. It has nothing to do with being sympathetic. It's just called that. But these are two branches of what's called your autonomic nervous system. It's the nervous system that runs the interior functions of your body without you knowing about it or having to think about it. And that basically has two branches. And one, the sympathetic, is the branch that activates what we know as the fight or flight response, fight or flight or freeze, which is the response that we have in response to danger. And that gets your heart beating faster, gets your blood pressure up, gets your blood clotting faster, your eyes open wide. If you're really scared, like you get attacked by a wild animal out in the jungle, you might pee in your pants or loincloth, and you might even evacuate your bowels, right? I mean, so it's just set for you to either fight for your life or run for your life like you never have before. It's the part that goes off when a woman sees that their baby's under a car and they have superhuman strength and they can move that car. Or people do extraordinary things. It supercharges you to survive a threat to your life. Now, the trouble is that goes off even if you're imagining threats. So when you watch all the pundits and they're talking about, we don't know what's going to happen in 2 years. We don't know how long this is going to go on. We don't know if it's ever going to recover. Okay, that's true, but it's not terribly useful information. It's just scary. The other side of your brain that you do turn on when you take a walk, you take a few deep breaths. If you can't go outside, if you don't have nature near you, you can imagine going to somewhere beautiful in your mind, and your body will have the same response. Just like when you imagine something bad happens, your body will have this danger response. It's just, there's a little part of your brain right in the center called the hypothalamus. It's as big as the tip of your little finger. And it basically boils down all the information that comes into your brain, real or imagined, and it boils it down to one of two messages, which is watch out, danger, and then it sends this signal through your body. You get a big adrenaline rush. Like I said, all these facets of the fight or flight response go up. Or the other message is it's all clear, it's cool. And it sends another message down, this parasympathetic response, which signals your digestion to start working, your blood flow to open up to all the tissues of your body, you to be able to absorb and use blood sugar and replace all the chemicals in your brain that got, and your muscles that got used up in that fight or flight response. So it resupplies your brain, your nervous system, and your body so that you can be ready again. The trouble in this constant media barrage and constant fear that we have gotten unconscious about or addicted to is that you never get to go into that replenishment stage, that relaxation response, replenishment. And so you just wear out faster. You're not made to go to be in fight or flight 24/7. You're made to be in it every once in a while when something really bad happens. But we've gotten into this loop where we can just be in it all the time without. So we have to learn how to interrupt it, how to punctuate it, and at least take a time or two during a day. Not saying don't watch the news. Your relatives in Israel have to be aware they've got enemies all around it. They need to be aware frequently, but they also need to take care of themselves. And there's no better time for self-care than right. You have to take care of your body and your brain, and your nervous system, and your mood, because this is a marathon, not a sprint. So you have to back off. You have to say, all right, I'll watch this station, the morning news. I might watch at the end of the day, I might watch a half an hour. But when you're watching over and over and over and over and over the same things over and over, and they're concentrating on the largely scariest things, it's not good for you. The other thing is, as you implied, all of this news is about the virus. It's not all about the virus. It's about your immune system and your resiliency and your health. And so, you know, the virus isn't 100% responsible for causing this illness. If you have someone with COVID-19 and they're in an elevator with 30 people and they sneezed, which is a disgusting thought, not everyone in that elevator will get it. Maybe 15 will get it. Out of that 15, maybe 4 or 5 will get a fairly serious case, and maybe 1 will die. So if you're going to say that the virus causes the illness, why didn't everybody get it? And why didn't everybody die? And the difference is because some people have more energy, have more resilience, have better immune systems, are in better shape, have eaten better, have better genes. We don't know all the factors, but a lot of the factors are things that you can do. What you eat, whether you let yourself rest, whether you let yourself sleep, whether you take care of your emotions, whether you let yourself enter into that deep, relaxed, restorative state of the relaxation response. And a lot of those things are fairly simple, and you could be doing them, and it would be good if you were doing them, because I heard Dr. David Katz from Yale the other day say that 98% of the people with this illness have a mild illness. 98%. So I had heard 85% before. So let's say it's in between that. It's not something to get freaked out about. What we're doing is we're trying to protect the most vulnerable among us. We're trying to protect the elderly and people with pre-existing illnesses, and protect the medical care system from getting overwhelmed. And in many areas, like here in the San Francisco Bay Area, that has worked well. So we're being respectful of our communities, but you shouldn't be freaking yourself out if you don't have to. And when you take a real look at what's going on, you don't have to. And that's what I teach in the Worry Solution, is how to separate out the the worries that you really need to pay attention to and do something about. And those are certainly, there are certainly things involved here. And separate out what has just become a bad habit and kind of a self-hypnosis where you're just scaring yourself routinely because you don't know how to use your imagination. You're letting it run roughshod over you. Albert Einstein said the mind is a wonderful servant, but a terrible taskmaster. You can't let your imagination be your boss. You can't let it be the boss of you because it'll drive you crazy. Or
You
it'll
know,
make
something
you sick.
like a lot of things have come to mind while you're talking. One of the things on that note is that professional athletes routinely use imagination, that they will think ahead of time how they're going to be
Absolutely.
doing whatever activity they're doing and how it's going to come out. And that
Yes.
profoundly impacts the outcome. I've even seen research where there were athletes who had an injury, so they were down and out for a while, but they were practicing every single
Absolutely.
day in their mind, and that kept them able to get back into the game in top form. Another thing that I was thinking about is, you know, in your work, you talk about how, you know, again, bringing it very much down to a basic level that for people that this is new for, they're going to understand when you have a cut, you don't have to go crazy trying to heal the cut. Pretty much just keep it clean. The cut's going to heal itself. The body knows what to do.
Yeah.
And so when you're going into this rest digest mode, when you're, you know, you're getting into a relaxed state, what you're doing is you're enabling your body to do what it already knows how to do. And what's interesting about this period is, on the one hand, everybody's being amped up into fight or flight mode to be afraid, but on the other hand, everything's shutting down. And that's actually a form of rest digest. It's like, you can't go zipping down the freeway and making yourself crazy trying to do work and kids and everything, because, you know, the work's gone now for most people. You know, the kids probably has amped up now with people, you know, taking care of the kids at home 24/7.
Yes,
but,
that's
you know,
stressful.
in many ways, things have slowed down and the earth is starting to repair itself. It's almost like the fact that animals are coming back and pollution's going down. It's almost modeling for us, when you stop, here's what happens, people.
Right, exactly. And there are opportunities here, you know, in Chinese, the word for crisis is two characters that mean dangerous opportunity. And that's what we have. There are opportunities here to look at how we've been living, because even before this, America is one of the most unhealthy countries in the world. It's the richest country in the world. It's got very poor public health. We rank in the bottom of almost every agreed upon measure of public health throughout the world. Infant mortality, longevity, the amount of chronic illness in the society. And it's tied to this, it's tied to lots of things, but one of the things it's tied to is just not paying attention to taking care of the self. We're taking care of it in terms of striving and working and being busy and avoiding lots of things that are part of life, but we're not doing a good job of really taking care of ourselves or the people who need the most in our society, and that affects us. That affects us all. So there are a lot of opportunities in this pause, and I would encourage people to look for them and pay attention to what you need to do to stay safe and keep your neighbors and your family safe. And don't let your imagination get hijacked by fears or media. Learn how to use your imagination. You'll come out of this crisis in a much better shape. And you
I'd
know,
love to talk about
go ahead.
I'd love to talk about the tools that you offer, and I understand that you're generously making some of them available for free to help people support themselves. But before we get into the specifics of that, I just want to comment on something you were saying, that this has really, to me, been just showcasing all of the weak places and the sickness, really, of our medical system and of our society and how we're approaching health. You know, I wrote a blog post several weeks ago about how I wish that instead of just kind of, you know, throwing everyone into fear, that the medical system and government was taking this as an opportunity to educate people on what they can do to practice self-care. All the things that you mentioned before, like the nutritious diet and the resting and, you know, all these different positive lifestyle changes, and also to make it accessible. So we have surgery accessible. You know, that's subsidized by healthcare, but supplements aren't, juicing isn't. So what is that about? Why are we subsidizing the things that just kind of encourage people to get sick and then throw the big guns at it that could cause other issues, as a result, as an outcome of those, like the side effects of pharmaceuticals, or, there's disabilities that can come as a result of the complications of surgery. And why aren't we instead focusing on the self-care piece? And that's why I'm so excited about your work, is that you give people a tool, and especially at a time like this, when people are in lockdown, and like you said, maybe they can't get out to nature, but they can imagine nature. So this is a tremendous opportunity to go inside and to activate one's imagination in very positive and constructive ways. So if you can talk a little bit about the specifics of how exactly do your guided imagery CDs work. I just want to testify that I have used them over the years. They are fantastic tools. I get tremendous insights that I would not have if I was not taking the time to go deep inside in that way and just allow these images to come. But I'd like you to talk a little bit about what is involved in your CDs, how do they impact people, and how in particular can people take advantage of this time when they may be going crazy. I mean, we've been in lockdown now, 6 weeks or something. People are like wanting to get out and get into nature or whatever it is. How can they specifically use this time as an opportunity for going deep inside and becoming the master of their imagination?
Well, there's no better time, really. I mean, guided imagery is so simple. It's one of the reasons I love it. It's taking advantage of a natural thing you do, but just learning how to do it so that it benefits you rather than drives you crazy or makes you sick, which is the default position, unfortunately, because we are wired to worry. Because when we worry, we can avoid dangers and problems that may be in the future. And so it's a very useful thing if you know how to separate out useful worry from futile worry. And that's what I basically teach. So I've made a lot of my most appropriate guided imagery tracks available as downloads, free of charge. They're at www.thehealingmind.org, thehealingmind.org. There's a whole page full of them, from what is stress to breathing techniques to reduce stress, to simple guided imagery, to deep relaxation, to what I call positive worry imagery, which is taking your fearful worries that you can't do anything about and turning them upside down, and learning how to focus on what you want to have happen instead of what you don't want to have happen. Technique called evocative imagery, which helps you build strength and resilience. They're anywhere from 5 minutes to 22, 23 minutes. I lead you through the whole thing. It's very, very simple. It's easy. It's pleasant. You'll get up from these things feeling much better than you did before. And you'll learn tools that you'll use the rest of your life. There's also a bunch of streaming or downloadable video lectures on mind-body medicine, the art and science of mind-body medicine, on what integrative medicine adds to medicine, on pain relief, on how to get better sleep. So these are, as a public service, just available to everybody. The mind, first of all, like you said, our bodies are essentially 4 billion-year-old healers. They have been practicing for 4 billion years in the presence of every bacteria, virus, parasite known to man, thousands, hundreds of thousands of them. You have survived this far. Your bloodline has survived over hundreds of millions of years. You've inherited the genetic knowledge and the knowledge in your body of how to live with bacteria and viruses, and throughout your whole bloodline. And the thing is, there are things that you can do that inhibit that ability. Eating crappy, staying up late, not getting sleep, letting stress run away with you, excessive drinking, smoking cigarettes, all kinds of stuff like that. And there are things you can do that nourish that ability, that, feeding yourself better, getting your rest, learning how to turn on a deep relaxation state, getting your emotional house in order. All of those things allow the 4 billion-year-old healer to work at its maximum ability. And these things are actually very simple to learn. I take you step by step, by the hand. They're free. Go get them. Take a half an hour once a day and try them out and see if they don't help you. They don't solve every problem. They won't pay your bills necessarily, but they might help you solve some problems and help you be more creative in terms of how you're going to pay your bills. So the main thing is to not let yourself freak, because when you freak out and you let anxiety dominate your life and you let the stress dominate your life, you aren't going to be able to respond well to both the stresses and the opportunities that are here and that are coming in the future. So it's a great opportunity. It's a great opportunity for your teenagers to learn to do it, for your young people to learn to do it, even for your little kids to learn to do it, because life is probably not going to get less stressful. And so it becomes even more useful to learn how to use your brain to solve problems rather than create problems, and to reduce stress rather than make stress.
Right. And one last thing I'd like to touch on before we go is my favorite guided imagery CD of yours has a section where it says, once you go through all the relaxation and you imagine a healing place and you're like super blissed out, then you ask the person listening to bring to mind a problem. And it can be anything, physical, emotional, whatever. And after you go through getting very detailed imagination of what that problem is, you ask them to bring in mind the solution and also get very detailed about what does it look like. And then the really cool thing is you ask them, now imagine the problem turning into the solution. And I love that, because something in my own life is that I haven't just survived and I haven't just thrived despite chronic health issues, despite trauma, but I've actually leveraged the energy of that and turned it into something positive and beautiful, and turned that into a gift to then heal myself and help other people heal. So I just feel that is such a powerful tool to think about, how can we transform that which is dark into that which is light. And so that is why I particularly love that CD of yours. So again, www.thehealingmind.org. And Dr. Rossman has so many CDs and books, whether you're facing cancer, you're dealing with anxiety or fear or stress or worry, whatever, he teaches you how to channel your imagination. So I'd like to thank you, Dr. Marty Rossman, for being here today. And I really enjoyed speaking with you and connecting with you again. Hello, I'm Loolwa Khazzoom, the host of Zoom with Khazzoom for Joyful Living. I'd like to give a shout out to my mom in the afterlife, EJ Khazzoom. I wear her art, her rings, her bracelets, her necklaces, her barrettes, while I am having conversations with people on my show. And she was a self-taught artist. She did ceramics, metal, crochet, very brilliant woman. So love you, mommy.